Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Allie, and I am a feral tarot. And in addition to tarot and tarot adjacent content and topics, I also really like to get into um, all kinds of psycho-spiritual, psychological, philosophical, basically all of the meat and potatoes of anything to do with New Age spirituality, religion, psychology, all that jazz. I like getting into why the source material, why we believe something as a community versus just being like somebody said it, it's on the internet, and it's true. So today I'm going to talk about twin flames and soulmates. I admin in a spiritual group on the Book of Face called Enchanted Steppers. And on Fridays, we do this Fact or Fiction Fridays where everybody talks about a myth or a trend that they're seeing on social media or just some kind of like whatever nonsense they see about the spiritual community in the wild. And today's submissions included somebody saying that they had seen somebody in the wild say that the whole concept of twin flames and soulmates was cult behavior and generated by a cult, and they thought that was funny because they believed that it's not, that it's actually a spiritual tenet somewhere in some philosophy. And I had to say, well, actually, that's actually pretty true. So I decided while I was having this discussion with this group member, I might as well just make a whole video about this. So here we are. So the concept of twin flames, what a lot of people who defend the concept of twin flames propose is that it's like canonical Greek mythology because it comes the first time you ever really see the concept of humans being one thing split into two and then spending the rest of our lives searching for our other half. So we're supposed to be one soul split in two, and that's why they call them soulmates. So the original concept was soulmates. This comes from Greece. Plato wrote a story, basically, in between 385 and 370 BC. Plato was a philosopher, so he was a really bored guy who just liked to sit around and talk a lot. Essentially, that's the stereotype of all philosophers. So he wrote this story called Plato's Symposium. Now, Plato's Symposium is philosophical prose. It's philosophical, so there's that. Prose is a written, like you're writing a story, but it follows the natural flow of speech, the language of the native speaker's original grammatical structures, normal writing, conversations, formatting, like they write it the way that they talk. It's not poetic, there's no meter to it, it's not structured. It's literally just like free writing. And the form of the story is Socratic dialogue, which is basically a way of conversing with somebody using back and forth questions and like a debate. You're forming argumentative statements to try to gain more knowledge, to either just gain more knowledge, prove or disprove your theory or somebody else's theory. So it discusses certain gods, but it is not mythology. The story that he created involves the gods because he was Greek, but it is not considered canon mythology. I want to be very clear about that. So pretty much everything that this type of writing entails is metaphorical. It's all supposed to be metaphorical. It's not supposed to be literal. It's not supposed to be myth. It's designed to get you to think deeper than just surface level stuff. Start asking yourself questions, ask other people questions, really get into like introspecting on the nature of these beliefs, why you feel that way, why anybody feels that way, origin stories. Like it really, the point is to prod you to think, but why, but why, but why, but why. So the point of Plato's Symposium, it's supposed to be a philosophical debate between three people on the nature of love in all its forms, because the Greeks had 4 forms of love, and the significance and place of love in civilized society. So the 4 types of love the Greeks have is, and I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation because I do not speak Greek, philia, eros, storge, and agape. So philia is friendship. It's friend love, the affection and fondness and love between platonic friends. Eros is romantic love. That's, the god Eros. Physical love, sexual desire. That's Eros. Storge is familial love. So parent-child love, sibling love, grandparent, the love of family members between family members and that familiarity. And then agape is probably next to Eros the most favorite. You see memes and inspirational posters all over the place about it. But agape is the purely selfless, unconditional form of love. No strings attached, no expectations, no requirements. Love for the sake of love. That's agape. So the Socratic dialogue in Plato's Symposium is about all of these forms of love. So navel gazing about love. So let's get into it. So a character that Plato invented called, probably going to butcher it, Aristophanes. I have notes over here on the other side of my computer. Aristophanes, who is it's between Plato, another guy. I didn't even look at like what the other character was because it's irrelevant. He's probably like a lawmaker or something. And then this Aristophanes, who Plato designed to be a comedic playwright. Now, the satires and comedy was a big thing to the Greeks, so this tracks. He was a satirical playwright because... So essentially picture the ancient Greek version of Jerry Seinfeld. That's what we're working with. Aristophanes equals Greek Jerry Seinfeld. Can't take anything seriously. Sarcastic about everything, makes fun of everything, uses extreme examples, hyperbole to make points and jokes. We all know how comedy works now. So they're having this discussion, and in Aristophanes' portion of the discussion, this is where the soulmate thing comes from, because Aristophanes said that Aristophanes' speech, you're talking about the origins of man, the gods, the relation of man to the gods, love, nature, blah, 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 all that stuff. So Aristophanes says that basically the original concept of man that Zeus created was this 8-limbed, completely rounded, 2-sided ball of a monstrosity of a human that just rolled around everywhere. That's what we originally were. And then Zeus split us up and said, oh, that's kind of sad. So that's how he created the genders, allegedly, and figured out that the male part and the female part needed to face each other instead of being back to back, like they were in the original 8-limbed roly-poly ball human version. That's how we would procreate and reproduce and have kids, essentially. So picture, and that splitting apart is like the male half and the female half. So it's one ball of human. This is the point. It's one ball of human split into half, and you spend the rest of your life trying to find the other half of your soul. That is your soul's mate. Together you form one thing. That is Aristophanes' theory. That's what he says. The sarcastic Jerry Seinfeld says that. So that's the origin of soulmates. a Jerry Seinfeld-esque character created in a story written by a Greek philosopher designed to trigger deeper thinking about human concepts like love in a story that he wrote, said it as a joke, and that's where it lived. 25 years ago in 1999, a woman named Elizabeth Clare Prophet wrote a book called Soulmates and Twin Flames, The Spiritual Dimension of Love and Relationships. In 1999, she wrote that. Now, those of you who are present in the community or just alive and into spirituality during that time, you might remember the wild resurgence that New Age stuff had in the 90s. I think every town had a Lady of the Lake store. Doreen popped off hard with her angel numbers, angel cards, angel oracle decks. It was a wild time. Everybody was into Enya. There was the whole, month where we were all obsessed with Gregorian chants. It was a time, okay? So this kind of fits right in with that niche. So she wrote this book in 1999. Now, in 1998, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Remember that. The year before, she wrote this book. Not published, wrote. She was diagnosed with a degenerative dementia brain disease. Hold that thought. It's relevant. So, Elizabeth married a dude named, where's my note? Elizabeth married a dude called Mark L. Prophet. He founded a cult in 1958 called the Summit Lighthouse. He claimed that he was a messenger, prophet. Now, I'm almost 90% sure that prophet's not his legal government surname. We can just assume that because he thought he was a prophet. Said he was a prophet. So he said he was channeling messages from the ascended masters to humanity. The literal prophet. So when we start getting into ascended masters talk and we start thinking about 90s New Age spirituality, there's a lot of this is kind of where it really starts cleaving off hard into the toxic positivity, toxic spirituality, love and light, 5D, ascend higher, vibrate higher, all that stuff really starts popping the early 2000s with this sort of ascended master rhetoric. So in 1961, he marries Elizabeth and says, hey, she's just like me. She's a master messenger too. She's a messenger. 65, they moved to Colorado Springs. I don't know where from. It's not really relevant, in my opinion. In 1975, he died. So now Elizabeth's by herself with this cult. She rebranded it and turned it into the Church Universal and Triumphant. CUT for short. We'll refer to it as CUT from now on. So her predictions and her channelings became increasingly more apocalyptic, rapture-y, Armageddon-y as time goes on. And she started saying that nuclear war was imminent. Now, mind you, it's the 90s. We don't have the ability to really diagnose stuff as quickly as we do now. A lot of people had, especially people who have been in the spiritual community like this, they probably would have been more inherently distrustful of Western medicine. So she probably would have just avoided anything to do with like going to the doctor and traditional health methods herself. So she probably was exhibiting symptoms and the illogical thinking of Alzheimer's for several years before she was actually diagnosed. So as her brain disease progresses, she starts getting more and more doomsday apocalyptic rapture-y. And remember, 98 officially diagnosed, 99 wrote this book. And this book is the first time that the concept of twin flame gets introduced into the mainstream spiritual community or the mainstream anything community. Before that, it was like a non-issue. Like your average person didn't really know about it. She wrote this book the year after she gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and now all of a sudden everybody knows about twin flames. So when your primary source has a brain disease and is a cult leader, probably not something you should really latch on to too strongly. So, the church, the cult, established a community at the Royal Teton Ranch in Montana. They started building underground fallout shelters because their leader, their messiah, their prophet had told them that nuclear war was coming. In March of 1990, she told everybody that nuclear attack was imminent, like it was happening within days. So everybody hid in these fallout shelters. I don't know how long they did, but they did. She said it's happening right now. Everybody take shelter. They did, and it didn't happen. And as her disease progressed all through the 90s after this incident, the church started to become restructured. People started taking control of the organization from her. And a lot of like membership basically got like the legs got cut out from under it. Membership went way down, and a lot of like splinter factions of the cult broke off. So the goal of the cult was, and for each individual to spiritually evolve to the point where they would ascend themselves and become ascended masters. Here's where that whole ascended masters stuff starts coming back in. The whole 5D ascension syndrome, downloads, ascended masters, programming, quantum timeline, all that stuff. This is where it comes from. This is the root of it in the community. The cut taught that the ascended masters' plans to perfect human society. Now, the ascended masters are supposed to be a conglomerate of humans who lived, and then also like deities, because I think they're like Hindu gods that are supposed to be ascended masters too, but it's mostly humans who lived such good, pure, wholesome lives. You see the colonization, also the Christian side of all of this. If you've deconstructed and decolonized anything about your life, you understand what I'm saying. You know where I'm coming from. The ascended masters were so good. They were so good while they were here on earth that when they died, they ascended up to this upper level and basically became spirit guides for all of humanity. So when you go up and you look in the Akashic records, there's like a round table of all of these ascended masters that are supposed to be there that you can talk to. Mother Teresa, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Gandhi, Buddha, on the outside, stellar people, right? Mother Teresa was not a great person at all, and neither was Gandhi. They may have done like one or two notoriously good things, but there was a lot of shady stuff that they did to people to stroke their own egos and make themselves look good and serve their own needs. So, yeah, not great. So they're putting the Ascended Masters on a high pedestal. The Ascended Masters' plans to perfect humanity. So anytime you start in the spiritual community, you start coming into concepts where humanity needs to be perfected. We need to create a race of perfect beings. We need to create a race and a breed of humans that is above average. This is the standard. Does that sound Third Reichy to anybody else? Anybody? Yeah. So their plans to create the perfect human society were being hampered by dark forces, including communists, socialists, anything left-leaning governmental-wise, the federal government, mainstream religions, and extraterrestrials. Yeah. They said that the compounded global buildup of bad karma would result in the apocalyptic destruction of all humanity and mankind in the planet. And they predicted, they being probably Elizabeth, that this event would happen in 1990. So there's a bunch of us in the spiritual community who are constantly pointing out that there are a lot of really deeply problematic concepts, ideas, theories, practices, teachings, etc. in our community that actually stem from racism, colonization, the church, and a lot of Nazi Third Reich weirdness, white supremacy, alt-right. A lot of that has invaded and infested in many ways. And a lot of it is in this love and light spirituality, ascension, quantum manifesting, timeline jumping, vibrate higher, downloads, all of that stuff. 5D, star seeds, Pleiadians, Arcturians, Orion, all of that. Syrians, all of that has been deeply affected by the alt-right, Nazis, just not great stuff at all. So here, to demonstrate, here's the morality, ethics, and social views of the cut, this cult that the woman who coined the phrase twin flame, who made it super popular in the New Age community. This is what she taught her followers. This is what she believed. Here is the morality, ethics, and social views of the Wikipedia page of this Elizabeth prophet that I verified myself, and you can go verify their sources too. Outlining a conservative morality, the church expected members to take an active stance on various social issues. This, for instance, included a defense of the family unit and condemnation of abortion. Observers often term it right-wing. It generally viewed left-wing politics as being associated with anti-Americanism. That would be nationalism. This is Christian nationalism creeping into spirituality again. Decadence and moral failure. Just a reminder that left-wing politics consists of fair housing, everybody having access to healthcare, human rights, equal rights, workers' rights, the anti-American, and moral failure. Elizabeth regularly included condemnations of communism in her sermons. Now remember, like back in the day, communism was way more serious than it was today. It was absolutely not tolerated in any way, shape, or form. Like the government would shut you down and blacklist you if you talked about communism back in like the 50s and 60s. She opposed socialism in all forms, seeing it as part of the global elite conspiracy's plot to control all facets of society. She instead emphasized a philosophy of individualism, which is hilarious because she literally led a cult. Palmer and Abravanel characterized the church's viewpoint as a conservative republic stance. Every altar of the church has an American flag. An oversized framed copy of the U.S. Constitution is mounted in the main chapel of the church's headquarters. The church's communicants pledge not to consume alcohol, tobacco, or drugs. The organization recommends a macrobiotic diet with little red meat. Rock music is frowned upon, and some practitioners deem it unhealthy spiritually. So, the trauma from the psychological side of the house, saying that you have to have a twin flame, it's a very Christian colonized perspective that and it's usually women that this is applied to. If you don't have a man in your life, then you have no value to society or anyone else. You are defying the natural order of things. You are defying God. Now, even if you're not religious, our society was created by people who are. And those values and ethics and ideas pervade every part of our society, either consciously, overtly, obviously, or subconsciously, where people don't even think about it because they don't question it. They just let it ride. This is one of those things. So if a woman is single, it's an abomination. Remember, they used to call us spinsters. And a spinster's official age, I think, was like 23. Not like 40 or 50 or 60. If you weren't married by the time you were in your early 20s, you were of no value to society, would never be married, and were considered eccentric and like weird and wrong. So that's where this kind of sits with that concept. People who are abusers and predatory will take advantage of this perspective and this programming. And women especially, this caters a lot to women who have a very much like savior complex, like people who identify as empaths, people who identify as being very sensitive, who just have all the love in the world to give. They will get into relationships with terrible, terrible people. One, because they think they can fix them. And two, because having love and being in a relationship is the goal. That's the brass ring. If you don't have that, then who are you? What's your value? What's your worth? They were taught nothing, either directly or indirectly by all of society or religion. So this leads to a lot of domestic violence and abuser situations, generational trauma, that sort of thing. It's unhealthy. It's unhealthy to think that you are not a fully integrated, intact, complete human all by yourself. You do not need to be in a relationship with anybody to consider yourself whole. You're not missing anything. Another person's presence in your life will not complete you. You should feel complimented, not completed. Nobody else is responsible for you and your happiness, your problems, anything, any of that. All of that lies on you. Your husband or your wife is not responsible for your feelings. That's not to say that they can just be a dick and hurt your feelings, but their goal in life and their role in a relationship is not to complete you. You are an entirely whole individual and entity all by yourself without them. So twin flame culture says that you have to find your other person. You're incomplete without them. Nobody will understand you like your twin flame. And it always ends up being a dumpster fire. Everybody that people think, every woman that I've ever met who claims to be in a twin flame relationship or to have found their twin flame, it is always the most abusive, fucked up, ridiculous nonsense that you could ever imagine. And they think that that's their twin flame. The other half of your soul is, even if we believed that souls were split in half, the other half of you isn't going to be a narcissistic abuser who beat you half to death and abused their kids. What kind of, are y'all okay? No, I know you're not. It's fine. That's why we're here. So the soulmate thing, back to Greece, because the twin flame was ripped off of Greece. The soulmate thing. You have several soulmates in your life. The essence of a soulmate, and again, incorporating all the different kinds of Greek love, all of those 4 types of love are soulmate bound, soulmate tied. Anybody that you meet who you feel a deep connection with, like you just know them, it's easy to be around them, they're comforting, they just get you. That's a soulmate. It's not supposed to be strictly romantic. It's platonic too. The core concept is a soul that your soul has known before in at least one lifetime or incarnation. And your buddies, you know each other. That's your safe place. It can be a pet, because pets incarnate too. It can be a sibling, a friend, a coworker, literally anybody. Anybody can be your soulmate, and you have several. You have several through your lifetime. I mean, some people only have that connection with 1 or 2 people. Some people have that connection several times throughout their life. There's no limit on it. There's not. So it's not one of these like, oh, if I miss my soulmate, I'll never find. No, because there's 7 more down the street waiting for you to make room for them to come in, waiting for you to quit looking down so you look up and see them. So twin flames are bullshit. And soulmates are numerous and plentiful. And the alt-right sucks. So yeah. I should name this series something, Decolonize with Allie. We'll figure out a name for it. But until then, find the source material, do the research, be responsible, decolonize, deprogram, deconstruct, and stay feral.